Hello folks, Johnny Cashflow here, and I've got a fun little video to put together. So one of the things that I love, even though I'm not on social media, is that I still run into people online who are enthusiastic to learn about my experiences in the Marine Corps and just the military and contractor world in general. So today I have 13 questions, and it's actually more than that, but that was asked to me by somebody online. And I thought that instead of having to type out answers for 13 questions, as I tend to be as long-winded in typing form as I do happen to be in verbal form, that I would try and give the best answers to these questions via a video and kind of put it all together in a video. So we're going to try and keep this as short and condensed as possible while also being as thorough as I can to give a good, satisfactory answers to these questions. All right, so just as a real recount, all right, of my career, just real briefly, I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps in June 2001. I then went to Parris Island, South Carolina for my basic training in June 2002. Something significant happened between those time periods. All right, I originally enlisted as an 0311 infantry, and my father begged me to change my MOS after I enlisted, which I did, to an 0231, which is an intelligence specialist. And I was an intelligence specialist for 5 years in the United States Marine Corps. My first unit I was with 4 different units in 5 years. I got passed around quite significantly. And during that time, my first unit was with Small Craft Company. It was a specialized riverine unit out of Camp Lejeune. We deployed to Iraq in 2004. Then I came back and was transferred to RCT 8, or Regimental Combat Team 8, when I was deployed again in 2005. I then came back, kind of got floated around some different units, finally ending my career in 2nd Tank Battalion as their S2 there. Got out. I then got a job as a civilian contractor, where I deployed twice as a civilian contractor, once in 2010 through 2011, and then again in 2012 through 2013. All right, so that's my basic career in a nutshell. I've worked for the DoD and the State Department since then in different capacities, but that's basically been my career as far as deploying and stuff that are going to be relevant to these questions. All right, so let's get into it. Okay, first question is, how are units referred to over the radio from the company down to the fire team level? So generally we're going to have call signs. All right, for example, with Small Craft Company, since we were a riverine company, we came in and we wanted our call sign to be Trident. That was already taken by the SEALs, apparently. They got it before we did. So then we ended up having to change our name to our call sign to Patriot, because our CO was a big fan of the New England Patriots, which I thought was pretty lame, but we became Patriot. And so then different numbers are assigned. So like first platoon would be Patriot 1, second platoon would be Patriot 2. Typically the 6 is reserved for the command. So our CO would be Patriot 6, and then like on the radio, and then when it's him actually talking, our actual CO talking on the radio, he would go by Patriot 6 actual. Same thing with like first platoon. If it was Patriot 1, then when it was the actual, instead of having like an RTO, right, or the radio guy on when the platoon commander would actually be on the radio, he'd be Patriot 1 actual. And so that's generally how we're referred to over the radio. So I can't remember what the higher commands were, but they would all have their their call signs as well. So, whatever, Spartan, whatever, right? Whatever the call signs might be. All right. So that's an easy one. All right. 2, how do you change after going through boot camp and having been enlisted for a few years? He said, I don't just mean physically or in terms of what you know, but how do you approach entering rooms, the civilian world, when you're just walking around in a day or like anything other? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what mannerisms and habits do you pick up in the service that stay with you? So, long question, and some of these are going to be pretty long, but so with the Marine Corps, I will say that there was a slogan. I think it was what's it called? An advertisement slogan that was like, the Marine Corps, the change is forever. And that was kind of a real thing that, when I got out, I always said that, you could take the Marine out of the Marine Corps, but you can't take the Marine Corps out of the Marine. So there's still a lot of different things that I have picked up and that I keep with me through boot camp or just through my time. I guess one of the things that changed about me, first big one is learning how to be a leader and also how to interact with people on a different level. So for example, I am as I've said in many other videos and things that I talk about, I'm a pretty small guy. I'm a small framed guy. I joined the Marine Corps. I went in at 5'6", weighing about 118 pounds. I joined the Marine Corps. In high school, I wrestled at 112, the 112 weight class. So I've always been kind of a small guy, and because of that, I got picked on a lot. And so I had to learn how to take a joke, how to laugh at myself, and not take things too seriously. I had to kind of learn, there's the movie 8 Mile, right, where a famous scene where friggin' Eminem is like, my mom's a whore, and, my girlfriend left me, and blah, 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 blah. So what are you going to say about me or whatever, right? Like, I kind of learned how to get to the joke first and how to also throw it back, and how not to take it personally. Now in my life, it's very, very difficult to offend me. Whereas before I joined, I was maybe a little bit too serious. I took myself a little bit too seriously. Whereas now I make fun of myself all the time, and I a lot more self-deprecating now. And I learned that through just being called every single name under the bus, being ripped on constantly, especially being intel in an infantry company. You really had to learn to get thick skin, and it was a lot of growing pains, but yeah, and now hardly anything phases me. Say approach entering rooms. I mean, you got your standard stuff. I think most guys do this. Like I don't sit with my back to the door kind of stuff. When we go out to eat or something, my wife knows that I don't like having my back to the door and such. And I don't know. Like I'm not hyper. Like I'm not like hyper aware. I don't come in. I start scanning the room and looking at everybody's hands and blah blah blah. No, but I do kind of look around and notice that everyone. If I walk into a restaurant, for example, if it's crowded, like you can't see everybody. But definitely you kind of pick up shortcuts. Mannerisms, right? If I see people just sitting and enjoying their meal, then I just glaze over. I just scan past them. But obviously, if somebody's like sitting there looking out of place, then I might look at them a little bit harder. Or people coming in, into the restaurant or what have you. But you kind of learn shortcuts. It's not like burn notice or something where you come in, you're immediately scanning everybody's hands or anything like that. Nah, definitely you kind of pick up on people's general disposition and what looks out of place, and you do look to see if something's out of place, but for the most part, it's not like that at all. As far as just walking around on a date, I don't know if this is military or just being a little bit more aware, but just being aware of my surroundings. If I'm walking to my car, I can't stand it when people are just so stuck in their phones, that they're not paying attention to their surroundings. Like I'm always looking at my surroundings, looking at people around me, seeing if somebody's walking behind me. If I'm walking to my to and from my vehicle, just being aware of people who are out in the parking lot, people who are walking around me. I've never encountered anything negative like that, in that situation, but I've never had any kind of encounters in a parking lot, but, I imagine that, pumping a gas station, another perfect example. People go into the gas station, put their the nozzle in their gas tank, and then immediately start getting on their phones. I'm sitting there just watching as people are coming and going, because that's a good way to, if you're sucked into your phone or whatever, that's a good way to have somebody run up on you. So just stuff like that, I just kind of pay attention. But again, I don't know if that's because I'm a Marine or because, I'm a what I call a prepared citizen, like I conceal carry and such. So I just kind of try and be aware of my surroundings. So yeah, I don't like going out. My wife and I, we don't go like downtown at night. I avoid crowds and stuff. But yeah, it's hard to say if whether or not that's because of my Marine background or if it's because I just don't like being around people. It's hard to tell. So yeah, as far as other mannerisms and habits, I now say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, these sorts of things. I try to be polite and professional. There's a great quote by the great Mad Dog Mattis, who said, before to the Marines going into Iraq, be polite, be professional, but have a plan to kill every person that you meet. And I certainly kind of live that quote even to this day. I try to be polite to everybody. I hold doors open for people. I try to be very professional, but I do generally have think about okay, if somebody was to come in right now and start shooting, what am I going to do? Or if something bad happens right now where I'm at, what's the plan? So generally I do kind of think that in that regards. All right, number 3. What are a bunch of things that absolutely no doubt about it suck? Could be PT related or getting broken gear. I don't know, just the little things that no one tells you about and you can't find in a book somewhere. The first thing that nobody talks about, so I don't know, there's a lot of, I guess, romanticization of the military and of the Marine Corps. You watch things, before I joined, I loved watching Full Metal Jacket. I loved watching, Full Metal Jacket was the big one. Leatherneck, right? Jarhead. I'm sorry. Jarhead came out after I joined the military, I think. But I had Full Metal Jacket the first half, where he's in boot camp. I could quote you all of the lines from there and everything. And I think that my thought was that once you got in, everybody was going to be like you. Everybody was going to, love being in the Marine Corps. I wanted to be the next Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. I was going to go for 25 plus years. I was going to stay in, and it was going to be great. And I got in, and I quickly found out that I called the Marine Corps the 13th grade because it really was just like high school. Only now we all have to work together instead of just go to school or whatever. So in my high school, it was very cliquish. You had the jocks who hung out with the jocks. You had, the band kids who hung out with the band kids. The jocks never hung out with the band kids. You had the heavy metal kids. I went to high school in a rural area, so you had the farming kids who were in 4-H and would show up to school, kind of dirty or whatever because they had to get out early in the morning and milk the cows and do all chores and stuff. And so all these people really hung out together, and there wasn't a lot of cross communication between all of them. And so then I got in the Marine Corps, and it was very, very similar. It was very, very similar where you had it is what it is. You had the Black Marines who, were listening to rap and playing spades, and they kind of stuck to themselves. You had the Hispanics who were listening to their whatever that Mexican polka mariachi stuff is, and they're playing they're probably playing spades too. I don't know. They're doing their thing. They're hanging out with each other and speaking Spanish over there. And then you had different groups of white people. You had the white guys who were into like country music, and then you had the metal kids, who were into like heavy metal and stuff. And they all kind of hung out with each other. So there was a lot of, so it was still kind of cliquish in the Marine Corps, which I didn't expect. And there was a lot of like personality issues. There was a lot of drama, and I didn't like that. And then also there were a lot of negative Nancy's, as I call it. There were a lot of negativity. Like I was super like I said, I got through boot camp. In boot camp, I was the guide. I was a squad leader. Like I was top of my platoon for the entire time. And then I got into the fleet, and I'm surrounded by these people who just hate life, and all they're doing is just, oh, this sucks, everything sucks, blah 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 blah, everything sucks, and it got into my head, and I started kind of like agreeing with them, and all I heard was negativity, and when that's all you hear, then you start to become that, and then all you see is negativity. And so for my first deployment to Iraq, I'm with this amazing unit, small craft company, where we're literally on the river. Like, so yeah, it got hot, but we could always just take we could just go swimming in the water, and we could just hang out and be on water in a desert country where everybody else is out freaking getting dusty and hating life. We could take baths in the Euphrates, and cool down. And I was so jaded and upset at things that I never took a time to just slow down and just appreciate where I was, to really just take it all in and just be like, wow, like I'm on the Euphrates. I'm just this bitter kid. Like, yeah, this sucks. Life sucks. Blah, blah, blah. I can't wait to get home. Blah, 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 blah. And so I don't know about a bunch of things that absolutely no doubt about suck. My attitude sucked. The people, I always said, I love the Marine Corps, but I couldn't stand Marines. There's just some Marines who just, no matter what, will bring down the attitudes of everybody, and it's not healthy. It's not healthy. I didn't mind PT. I was always a fast runner, so I didn't mind it too much. Let's see, anything like little things no one tells you about. I mean, there's a lot of things. People get a big head. They get into these leadership positions. A lot of people who get into leadership positions are there largely because they just stayed in long enough. So you kind of get these leaders who just suck, man. So I could tell you all sorts of different stories, but like. For example, I lived in the barracks, and barracks life is just miserable. So we would get woken up at 4:00 in the morning to go out and police call, meaning go pick up trash around the barracks. All right, and then you'd have these corporals walking behind you, and we're out picking up trash, and we have to get in line. We have to get in a long line, like a horizontal line, and walk and pick up trash online, okay? If the corporals found any trash, then you'd have to start over. So as we're walking, they're walking behind us, and if they see trash, we have to go back to the start and start all over again. If we did it 3 times, if they found 3 pieces of trash, then we had to go back, and then we had to low crawl around the barracks picking up trash. Like, and it was all cigarette butts. We're looking for cigarette butts primarily, okay? And I didn't smoke. there's cigarette butts all around the barracks. So instead of saying, hey, if you smoke, you got to come out and pick up cigarette butts, it was everybody. So that really sucked. Like that was stupid. After field day. Field day is what we call every Thursday in the Marine Corps. You have to go and clean your room, okay? And it was a game. You could always find something wrong if you want to. So it became really personality based. So if the staff sergeant or whoever is inspecting your room and they don't like you, you're gonna fail every time. But if they like you, then you could get away with freaking murder. You don't even have to clean. And so I had one staff sergeant. So after in the Marine Corps, it's really important that you deploy to combat. Back when I was in, okay, like deploying to combat was a big thing. It was a big sign of like respect, okay. And at the time, this was 2006. We had been in Iraq for 3 years, and we had been in Afghanistan for 5 years. But I remember reading an article in Marine Corps Times said something. I'm gonna misquote it, but it's something like only 3% of the Marine Corps had deployed within the 5 years or something like that. It was a very small amount. So it was very rare to see Marines who had deployed and who had also a combat action ribbon, which I had. And that's like a big deal in the Marine Corps. That's a big deal, like that you've seen combat, and it's a big deal. But then it also kind of put a target on my head because, again, I'm a small little guy, so this small little guy, has been to combat, and I'm a big tough Marine, and so I'm gonna show him that he's not shit, kind of thing. And that was an attitude that I got a lot. And so, for example, mind you, I had 2 combat deployments. Both times I had been in firefights and been in physical combat. And so, and all my staff NCOs, I got transferred to a unit. All my staff NCOs, nobody had been to combat yet, right? I was like one of very few people who had actually been to combat in this unit. And so the staff sergeant hated my guts, hated me. And so he came in one day to inspect my room. We had cleaned our room. I had a roommate who was such a freaking suck up. He would go way out of his way to try and make our room look freaking like perfectly spotless. Okay? And that's fine, whatever, right? But like, for example, you know how in like hotels, how they fold the toilet paper into like a little arrow, they kind of fold the edges or whatever, and then they use a little dab of water to seal it, so that when you pull it out, it looks like it's fresh toilet paper or whatever the hell. For whatever reason they do that. He would do that in our bathroom just to make it look nicer for inspection. Okay, so we're there. This staff sergeant comes in with a screwdriver in his hand, pulls up a chair, gets up, unscrews our vent where the air comes out, unscrews it, pulls out a white glove, puts the white glove on, wipes inside the vent. Dust. Failed. Our weekend, we weren't allowed to leave base, and we had to stay for extra duty around the barracks for and the shops and everything. We had to stay and do like lawn mowing and shit like that for the weekend. So like that's bullshit, right? Like that is absolute bullshit. It was absolute bullshit. And so like that stuff like that was one of the leading reasons why I got out. Because you have these people who just they don't like you, they decide they don't like you, and they're gonna make your life miserable, and they can do it no matter what. So yeah, man. So that sucked. All right, next. Number 4, what do MREs taste like? And do you think there's a ranking for which ones taste better than others? Absolutely. MREs, they're okay in short bursts, and depending on what you get. Absolutely, 100%, there are better ones than others. Absolutely. I know that there's new ones out now. I've seen new MREs that I've never heard of, but back in my day, some of the best ones were Chili Mac. I like the cheese tortellini. Trying to think of all of them. There are definitely ones that suck. There were what we call the Five Fingers of Death. There were hot dogs, little Frankfurters. They were gross. They tried to do like a cheeseburger. I think that was gross. About the time that I was getting out, they were trying to do like breakfast stuff. So they had like an omelet that I recall being gross, and they also tried to do a buffalo chicken that was really gross. So what you would find in these is, so an MRE, it has all these. It's not just your main meal, but you get like a main meal, a side, you get snacks, usually like crackers or like a pound cake or something. You get like jalapeno cheese was a big one, and like peanut butter, and then you kind of get like a little packet of whatever, freaking coffee and butt wipes and all sorts of whatever. So anyway, and usually like a candy like Skittles or Charms or something like that. And you don't eat the Charms. We were supposed to like get rid of the Charms, and I think Charms ended up going out of business because they stopped including them in the. I think the MREs were the only thing keeping Charms in business. So what you would do is you'd go into a box of MREs, and you would have what we call rat fucked. All right, and a rat fucked MRE is an MRE that somebody's already gone through, taken what they wanted out of it, and put it back. All right, so for example, like when you had the hot dog ones, which were gross, nobody wanted to eat the hot dog main meal, but like it would come with, for example, I can't remember what it came with, but like for example, it would come with jalapeno cheese, and that jalapeno cheese is worth its weight in gold. Okay, everybody wanted the jalapeno cheese, so, and people knew like which MREs had the jalapeno cheese in it, so they would go open it up, take out the jalapeno cheese, and throw the rat fucked freaking MRE back in the box. So you go in and you're like, oh shit, freaking Chili Mac, right on. And you go and pull out the Chili Mac, and oh shit, they've taken the freaking main meal. They've taken the Chili Mac, and they've taken the jalapeno cheese. So all you're left with is like a side of crackers and freaking whatever the side dish was or whatever. And so those guys are assholes, by the way. All right. Don't fucking throw your rat-fucked MRE back into the friggin' box. All right. Anyways, so that became like a standing rule. Like we had a box for all the full MREs, and then we had a rat-fuck box that you just kind of threw everything in. But anyways, so there's definitely a ranking. I mean, obviously it depends on individual tastes, but I would say my favorites, from what I recall, were like I said, the Chili Mac MRE, and then you got to get the jalapeno cheese, and you put the jalapeno cheese in the Chili Mac, and it's just next level. It's next level. And then also I really like the vegetarian cheese tortellini was pretty good. It's really good. All right. Do you know what a typical recruiter would say or do to entice someone young and dumb to enlist? Well, yes, I do know, because I had a recruiter who came in, So what I will say about the Marine Corps is that, for better or worse, the Marine Corps, we advertise, but we don't pander. So I just went to an event for just recently with my business, and it was at an airsoft event. And they had the Marines there, Marine recruiters, and they had Army recruiters there, okay? And I was proud to see that the Marine recruiters are still setting up a pull-up bar, okay? And you have to come, you have to do some pull-ups, do a pull-up, and you get a t-shirt, okay? The Army recruiters had like this game show wheel where you had to spin the wheel and you got like a prize or something, right? And I think that was a perfect example of how the each branch is. The Marines, you got to earn it. Okay, nothing's given to you, okay? You're not given your Eagle Globe and Anchor. You earn your Eagle Globe and Anchor, okay? People often will come up to me and talk about, like, in the Army, they talk about all their enlistment bonuses. Oh, I had, when I was working as cadre for the Army, and I had guys there who were talking about how they were given $10,000 enlistment bonuses just for them to enlist. And so, people will come up to the Marines and be like, what are you going to give me to join? And it's like, no. That's not how we work, man. Like, we don't give you shit. We give you the opportunity to prove yourself. We give you the opportunity to be better and make yourself a better person, and you get the opportunity to try to join and earn the title of Marine. That's what you get. And so I'm glad to see that the Marines are still kind of in that mentality, but for better or worse too, because I remember after boot camp, I went on recruiter's assistance, and I was working I just got out of boot camp. This is pretty common. You just get out of boot camp and then you go back home, and the idea is that you go back home and then you help the recruiter, and you go back to your school, and you're able to be like, hey guys, remember me? I just graduated from high school last year, and now here I am, and I'm making money, and blah 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 blah, right? And that's the idea. But when I went back for recruiter assistance, my recruiter, the recruiter who recruited me, was no longer there, and he was replaced by this crusty old staff sergeant. This guy, he had to, like, it's not common to see a crusty old staff sergeant. This guy, he looked like he was the grand old man of the Marine Corps. He looked like he had been in for 28 years, and he's still a staff sergeant, which is like an E6, right? Like he looked way old. And I remember we were sitting there. We set up a booth at this table outside of a school cafeteria, and there were all these kids coming into the cafeteria for lunch, and that's our time to be like, put on a show. Hey, come on, come join the Marine Corps, blah blah blah, right? This one kid, and this guy was just salty. He was just like, fucking kids, blah blah blah, right? And so I'm just standing there, and this kid, little tiny kid, kind of like me, just little tiny kid. His backpack is bigger than him. He looks like a Sherpa up in the Himalayas, with this pack twice his size walking past us. And he stops and he looks up, and this crusty old Marine is like, do you think you have what it takes to be a Marine? Or no, he's like, do you think you have what it takes to join my Marine Corps? And the kid, just without hesitation, just looks up at him and says, nope, and just keeps walking, and that's kind of how Marines are, so that's pretty much typically what they do. The Marines, they have, for me, they have like a little, these little cards on them, and they'll come and they'll sit down with you. And this was before 9/11, so I think they're still doing this, but this was before 9/11. They have these cards, and it's like, what are you looking for? What, in your life? What are you trying to do with your life? And so if you're like, and they set out all these little cards, and you have to rank them in order of importance, and so for me at the time, I'm like, hey, I want to go to college. I don't have any money to go to college, so I'll join the Marine Corps because the Marine Corps is awesome and aren't filled with a bunch of bitches like the other branches. So if I'm going to go join any military, I'm going to join the best. And so that's what I did. But my number one thing was college, right? And then like under it, whatever, family or career or whatever, they have all these different things. And no matter what you put up there, they have kind of their spiel that they'll go into. Like, oh, well, if you're joining for college, in the Marine Corps, we can offer you college assistance and blah 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 blah. So that's pretty. Or if you're like, oh, I want to join for a career. Oh, well, there's all these jobs and careers that you can learn on the job training and stuff with the Marine Corps. So that's kind of what Marines recruiters will talk to you about generally. Is just kind of like, I would say it works. I often tell people when they're talking about joining the military, what is it that you want to do? Because no matter what it is that you want to do, 99% of the time, there's opportunities for you in the military. Okay, so even if you're lame, you're like, I want to be I want to be an influencer, whatever the fuck that is. That's not a real job, but if you're like, I want to be an influencer. Okay, you can join the military and go be part of a public affairs and media. And there's a job. There's literally somebody right now on the freaking U.S. Army social media page just typing away and posting social media stuff. So you could go do literally anything in the military. So that's kind of what recruiters do, is try to see what motivates you and then use that to try to entice you to join the military. So what's next? What's your experience with your rifle? Oh man, lots. Or whatever weapon you were issued. I was issued an M16A2 service rifle. Is what I was issued. So real quick on this, just for your knowledge, for anybody who's watching this, you don't just get one rifle and that's your rifle for your entire enlistment. Like every station, every what we call duty station that you go to, you get issued a new rifle. So in Paris Island, where I went to for boot camp, I got issued an M16A2 service rifle. I qualified on that rifle, and then we turn it back in when I leave back into the armory, and then I went to Camp Geiger. We'll get into this here in a second, but then I went to Camp Geiger where I was issued an M16A2 service rifle, and then I used that rifle throughout combat training, and then I turned it back in, and then I got transferred to Camp Lejeune, and then at Camp Lejeune I got issued an M16A2 service rifle. So and then I deployed to Iraq with that rifle. So and it's usually unit based or what have you. So so that's how that works. What was maintenance like? I mean, it really depends. So back in what we call back in the rear, or back stateside, I mean, we broke it out. I think it's every 6 months we have to qual on the rifle. So you break it out for a week, go shoot for a week, and then you clean it, and then you turn it back in. Anytime that you use your rifle, whether it be for whether you're doing a rifle course or rifle training qualification course, or if you're going out to the field or you're doing some sort of training exercise, before you turn it back in, you have to clean it. And that is a painful experience because armorers love to make our lives miserable because they have to show up at god-awful hours. And so then they make us suffer. So we'll clean the rifles and try to turn it in. They're like, nope, it's still not clean enough. Take it back and clean it some more. And so they won't accept them for a long time, and it's painful. But when you're deployed, generally speaking, I would clean my rifle at the end of every day that I would go out on a patrol. Generally speaking, I say generally speaking because situation dictates, right? Sometimes I didn't go out on a patrol that day, so I didn't clean my rifle. It sat there. Or sometimes you're going out and you're doing a 32, 40, 72 hour op. I'm not cleaning my rifle. I'm in the field. I might need it. So I'm not gonna clean it, obviously, right? So I would clean it when we got back to the base. So basically, anytime I left the wire, it came back. I cleaned my rifle. the performance of it at close and long range. So I had, the M16A2 service rifle. I had iron sights on it until the second half of my second deployment to Iraq. So I had iron sights most of my deployments. The performance of it was good. It was a 20-inch barrel. So a 20-inch barrel firing a 5.56 kind of is like, it really helps to maximize the getting the velocity necessary for the 5.56 round to operate optimally. I've heard stories. I haven't experienced this. I haven't seen this, but I've heard stories about, when people were cutting the barrels. I say, with like the M4, for example, which has like a 14.5-inch barrel, I think, or something like that, that they weren't getting the same performance out of it. And so, I've heard stories. I haven't seen any of this happen, but I've always seen if somebody gets shot, they're either limping or hurting, pretty good, or they just drop. So, I've heard stories about, people getting shot, out of a smaller barrel and it not affecting them how it would have affected them with a proper 20-inch barrel. At close range, a 20-inch barrel is not optimal. I was in Fallujah in 2005, and having to clear buildings with a 20-inch barrel is pretty tough, especially because in Iraq and in most countries outside of the Western world, there's not really any standardized anything. There's no standardized stairs. There's no standardized door frames. So you could have a door frame that's really wide, or you could have a door frame that's really thin that, you could barely fit through walking normally. So trying to fit a 20-inch barrel in there, it could be very, very challenging. At long range, I will tell you that, especially given iron sights, we never engaged anybody outside of probably 300 yards. With iron sights and the way movies kind of portray gunfights, firefights is not very accurate. I always tell people, if you want to know what combat is really like, the best thing that I've seen thus far, best portrayal of combat, is watching Generation Kill. The miniseries Generation Kill is probably really, really close to it. And what you'll kind of see is like, we'll get shot at from, say, a tree line. We see the smoke, we hear the shots, we see the flash going off, right? And so it's just coming from that tree line. I can't see anybody in the tree line. I just know, like, we'll just yell contact front, contact left, contact right, or whatever, and then you have somebody be like, oh, they're in the tree line, and so then we just shoot at the tree line, and you're just shooting rounds into the tree line, or hey, they're up on the, a lot of times in Fallujah, we're up on rooftops, and you're like, oh, there they are, they're in that building, whatever, 200 yards out, 100 yards out, whatever, and you kind of like see movement, with a backdrop of a rooftop or whatever, on a rooftop, with a whatever, it's hard to explain, but like another. Anyways, you kind of see them backdropped, and so you just shoot at them, and so in that general area. So it wasn't until I got the ACOG, the last half of my second deployment, that I really, I felt like a sniper with that thing. But it wasn't. It's very hard to really target individual people. It was very difficult to kind of see. Not see what you're shooting at, but like you're just shooting at any kind of, you'll see like a flash of light, you'll see a flash, and then you just kind of start shooting at the flash and try your best to kind of Kentucky windage and kind of get it close to where that flash came from. So that's kind of long range. Close range, the closest that I'm kind of fortunate, despite helping in the clearing of buildings in Fallujah. I've never been in an engagement inside of a building with somebody else inside of the same building. The closest engagement I've ever had with anyone was probably, I don't know, I want to say like 50 yards, 75 yards, but maybe 100 yards. You know, like the ranges were not that close that I was engaged from and that I returned fire from. So that was probably the closest range was about 100 yards, I'd say. Engagements within that range were very rare, and I don't recall ever being engaged closer than that. Of course, keep in mind, I'm not out there with a rangefinder either. It's just, I'm trying to estimate the distance. Let's say about 100 yards. Did you enjoy using it? Yeah, I really liked the M16A2. So this was 2004, 2005, and it was okay. You want the new Gucci, you want the new stuff, and so I saw guys with M16A4s, and then they were putting like EOTechs on, and they were putting ACOGs on, and I'm like, that's what I want, I remember we got to, it really kind of pissed me off when in 2004, we're an infantry company, so like the nicest rifle that we all had that in our unit were our squad leaders had M16A4s with iron sights with a 203 underneath. Okay, our platoon sergeants had M16A4s with ACOGs. So we only had like 2 or 3 Marines with ACOGs in our entire company. Okay, and they were the higher ups. Sometimes we had thermals. A giant thermal scope the size of, I can't even describe, I don't know, I'm trying to think, the size of like a football, an American football, on our weapons, not on mine, but on certain weapon systems and stuff like that. But we pull up to Altacottum, where the 82nd Airborne was there, and I remember walking to the chow hall, and there was a female soldier walking, and she had an M4 with an aim point optic. I believe she had a 203, but all I remember was that she had like glitter stickers, a glitter unicorn sticker on her buttstock. And I remember just thinking, dear God, this fucking retard. And I might have to bleep that out for YouTube, whatever. But yeah, and so I was just like, oh my God, this person's stupid. But I walked up to her. I was like, hey, just curious, what's your MOS? And she's like, oh, I'm a blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what's that? She's like, administrative specialist or something. And I'm like, you're admin, and you've got an M4 with a aim point optic, and you don't even leave the wire. And here I am, in an infantry company, we're going out of the wire, and I've got an M16A2. So yeah, I was a little butthurt about that. Like, you want the good, the new stuff, So I did definitely feel like we were the bastard children of the military for sure. How heavy was it? The M16A2 service rifle is 7.5 pounds, I believe. Off the top, I thought it was 7.5 pounds, unloaded. Pretty sure. I'm trying to remember for 20 years ago, without looking it up. So okay, all right, 7. All right, where are we at? We're at 50 minutes. My goodness, we're gonna have to cut this up into multiple parts. So all right, what was your favorite part about my training? Favorite part of training? I mean, so. Training is very ambiguous. So my favorite part of boot camp was the rifle range. Probably. I love shooting. probably why I'm a firearms instructor. I love shooting. Anything where we actually got out and got to do like the obstacle course, the what's confidence course. You know, being like, I'm super afraid of heights, so getting up on the tower and having to do where you, I'll put a picture up here where you have to like pull yourself down the rope face first on top of it while hanging your foot and your knee or whatever, and go down, and then you kind of like, you have to come down, hang, and then bring your feet up again, and then from below, and then pull yourself the rest of the way down feet first. That was pretty cool. That really challenged me. The rappel tower really challenged me, again, because I'm super afraid of heights. I say that's why I'm so short. Because I don't, you know, and that's why I go rock climbing now, is still to challenge myself. I would say, like, any time when we actually got to do what you see in the commercials, you know, running through the mud and jumping into the mud and low crawling through the mud under the razor wire and stuff like that, or the concertina wire, it wasn't razor wire. Like, that stuff was always fun for me. I wanted to do more of that stuff. As I got into the fleet, favorite part of my training was still shooting. I remember we did what we call it CQB training. People today would not call what we did CQB training. We wouldn't call it CQB training, but we called it a CQB shooting course. And I remember, again, I wasn't very well liked in the infantry company at first. I had to earn my place, and people really hated me because I am what we called a POG, a personnel other than grunt. Okay, and so in that unit, if you weren't a grunt, you weren't considered anything. You were trash. Okay, so, and again, being a tiny guy, a small guy, on top of it all, you know, I was looked down on. I was treated like absolute trash. So we go out and we go shooting. The whole company is out doing this shooting, and I ended up getting second place in scoring the second highest out of the entire company, out of 114 some odd freaking whatever, 100 some odd guys. Second only to the second platoon commander. So that earned me a lot of props. Like, I got a little bit of respect after that. You know, all the respect didn't come until after our deployment, and after, you know, a lot of the respect comes after, you know, you've been in combat together. But that was kind of the beginning of where things started to shift a little bit, where, okay, maybe he's not completely worthless, you know, maybe we'll actually allow him to come on patrols with us and stuff like that. And that was still before our deployment. So that's always fun. I love shooting. Anytime I get to shoot, I will take. So yeah. All right. Number 8. If basic training lasted a lot longer, let's say 100 weeks or something equally outrageous, what kinds of things would be included in the training that aren't now because of the cost or time constraints? It's like, I've just wondered what it would be like if it was structured to train recruits as much as possible and as many useful things as possible rather than just what was considered necessary for the average grunt. I know the SEALs go through SEAL training, probably isn't worth the money. Yeah, all right, so good idea, and would it happen? So, I will say that in the Marine Corps, from what I have seen, based on my experiences, we have a 13-week basic training, and it was, I would say, very, very adequate for what we needed. It really did cover all of the things. I think that 13 weeks, more or less, generally speaking, really covered everything that the basic Marine needs to know. Outside of that, you start to get into specializations, right? So in the Marine Corps, we have 13 weeks of basic training. After that, we go, if you're a grunt, you go to SOI, or School of Infantry, okay? And I don't know how long their School of Infantry is. I think a month, maybe 2 months. I don't know. You'll have to ask an 03 something. Okay. But if you're a Pogue, then you go to what's called MCT, which is technically a subsect of SOI, but it's called MCT, or Marine Combat Training. Okay, so I went to Marine Combat Training, and from what I recall, and I may be misremembering things, but from what I recall, it was 2 weeks. The first week, you're kind of living in like these hardened structures that think of like going to camp. If you think of like a summer camp, like a cabin like that, but it's bare bones. You just have cots out there, and that's it. That are in these cabins, and so you go out there for the first week, and you're kind of learning stuff. You're learning how to patrol. You're learning how to, move in formation and get online and react to contact and this sort of thing. And then the last week is like more of like a field week where you actually go out. You're digging your fighting position, and you sleep out there, and you've got all these blanks, and the cadre are coming up and trying to assault your position and stuff. And so it's more like you are in a combat environment, and you're actually putting to the test what you learned the first week. So that's kind of the idea, more or less. So, so that's Marine Combat Training. Then from there, you go to your individual schools. So I went to Dam Neck in Virginia Beach, Virginia, for example, right? And that's where I learned my specific job. Okay, and that was 4 months. I want to say 4 months of training. Okay, because I got there in like December, and I graduated in like April. So I don't think that for the Marine Corps that staying longer is really going to benefit. I think you start to have diminishing returns, right? You're not getting the same kind of worth out of your time than you really need. I think that how we can improve basic training first is I read recently that the Marine Corps started to integrate with males and females in their training. That's horrible. That is a horrible, horrible, horrible idea. That's not good. That's not good at all. So that needs to go away. Next, to try and change it up, I would say, but yeah, outside of that, I would say that, the Marine Corps training that I got more or less was very good in boot camp, and maybe a little bit more combat training. I don't know what came of MCT after I got out, right? Or after my short time there, right? Because you got to understand that I went through MCT right after 9/11, right? So all of the lessons learned from the combat experienced guys hopefully made its way to MCT and SOI, and they were learning more applicable lessons from time spent in Iraq and Afghanistan. Okay, none of my instructors had ever seen combat, right? None of my instructors had ever hardly had even deployed, or if they deployed, it was, to go do training in Okinawa or something, or whatever, med float or something, as opposed to actually going to combat. So I think that's important, is that we retain the lessons learned from our times in Iraq and Afghanistan, and making sure that is in MCT. I think MCT could actually be a little bit longer, but generally speaking, I think that 13 13 weeks was adequate for sure. The Army and the Air Force and everybody else could actually stand to learn a little bit from that. SEER training is so specific. Like I said, like everybody starts after this. Everybody starts getting really, really specialized, and you got to go learn your school, and so, or your MOS, and so it doesn't. I don't think it would benefit anymore to have, an admin Marine take any more or learn any more about patrolling or anything than what they should already be learning in MCT, because it's just not going to be their MOS. It's not going to be their job, generally speaking. And I'll tell you that having gone through what I went through and being put into an infantry company, I would say that I integrated pretty well, considering that, everything with regards to how I was treated, how I was seen, my small stature, being able to then go and go out to the field with them and do patrolling with them and everything. I was able to just kind of fit right in. So I never felt that my training was subpar or should have been better, other than, now, of course, adapting to the threat. So, okay. Number 9, what benefits did the Marine Corps give, if any? Oh, man. I'm already at an hour. All right. Besides the opportunity to get shot at and shoot back. LOL. I would say the Marine Corps and the military in general, the benefits far outweigh the cons in general. I hope that the Marine Corps stays true to their traditions and their values and their principles and don't lower the standards for the sake of politics, which I fear is happening, but they've been kind of the last holdouts. The Army has lost it. The Navy's lost it. The Air Force lost it a long time ago. So I'm hoping that the Marine Corps will stay true to their traditions. So that said, the Marine Corps, if it wasn't for the Marine Corps, I wouldn't have a career. I wouldn't have the life that I live today. I wouldn't have the same mindset. I wouldn't be as analytical as I am today. I wouldn't have the same thought process that I have if it wasn't for the Marine Corps. I can't imagine what my life would be like without the Marine Corps. I'd probably be a loser. I'd probably be a complete and total loser. Who knows? Who knows, man? The Marine Corps has taught me so many things. One of the best things is how to be a leader. I don't know how many times I have to say it. I'm a small guy. I'm a small guy. And I have the ability to assert myself and not feel timid, not feel intimidated. I can walk into any place with confidence and not feel intimidated by anybody who's in there who might try and what we call big dick me, And a lot of that does come from the fact that I'm a Marine. I've been to combat. I've been shot at. Like, what are you gonna do? So there's a lot of that, but the big one I would say, the benefits is a career. You want to be, let's say you want to go be an electrician. Cool, join the Marine Corps. You go be, they'll teach you everything that you need to know to be an electrician, and then you get certified, blah 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 blah, and then you can go be an electrician. And you have all this experience already. Any place that you go to, they're like, "Oh, we're looking for at least 1 year experience or whatever." Like, where are you supposed to get that experience, right? Well, that's on you. But if you join the military and you go and you could go be literally just about anything in the military, and you have that experience already. And so you're coming in and you're like, "Hey, I've got 4 or 5 years experience, 6 years experience doing this job. Oh, I have managerial experience. It's not much, but like as an example, this isn't the biggest thing, but yeah, when I left the Marine Corps, I didn't know what to do. I left for stupid reasons and some good reasons, but mostly stupid reasons. And I didn't know what to do, so I went and worked at McDonald's. And like, oh, you're gonna be flipping McDonald's. It's such a cliche, but I did. But I was a manager there. I was closing. I was doing the safe. Counting money at the end of the night. Blah 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 blah. Right. So and I just walked in on that job. I was just like, yeah, I was a Marine. They're like, okay, you're gonna be a manager. Cool. And I was able to, and I thought nothing of it. It just rolled right into it. When I deployed as a civilian contractor with 3rd Special Forces Group, there were some Army guys that were there, the Army veterans in my job, and they were told, hey, just sit down, don't if we get attacked, just let us take over, right? Then they came to me, and the lieutenant was like, oh, Pace, weren't you a Marine? I was like, yes, sir. Yeah, I was a Marine. He's like, okay, then you're on the 240. Right on, sir. Because I was a Marine, they're like, hey, he knows how to handle himself. You're going to put him on the 240. And then after that, he's like, wait a second. He's like, you know how to operate the 240s, right? I was like, of course. He's like, okay, all right, yeah, you're on the 240. So there's tons of benefits all over, about being a Marine. Additionally, there's also I would say more of a brotherhood in the Marine Corps. If I see somebody at a restaurant or something with a Marine Corps hat on or something, I'll either nod or say go shake their hand, say Semper Fi or something like that. Where I don't see that in the Army. A big thing, you'll see this around our birthday. November 10th. We Marines go all out for our birthday. Marine Corps birthday ball is huge. It's a cultural thing within the Marine Corps that we treat it with high reverence. Conversely, the Army, I've literally been around soldiers and worked around soldiers, and they're like, oh yeah, it's our birthday, like whoopee, like they don't care. It's not they don't think anything about it. Like, yeah, they have a ball, but like nobody cares. They do not care. In the Marine Corps, it's such a big event, and so that's the other thing, is like there's a lot more camaraderie among Marines than other branches of service. So that's a benefit. All right. 10. What are things I need to know to properly depict Marines, even fictional ones from the future? Well, I don't know about future ones from the future. Fictional ones from the future. I would say, hopefully we stop having females be in, the infantry. Call me sexist all you want. I'm in a debate right now with a friend of mine over this. I'm not going to go on too much of a rant. I will just say that I have a lot of experience. I have several. How do I say this? I have many experiences with females in positions where they had to, defend themselves, defend me with my life on the line, and they have failed. And so I've witnessed it, and I've seen it, and I don't like having my life be jeopardized because of somebody's, political science major, not political science major. What am I trying to think of? Because of somebody's political science experiment is what I was trying to say. Because they want to shout equality while lowering the standards for females. How about we make the standards equal to begin with, and then we can start talking about equality. But anyways, so hopefully it'll revert back. Hopefully we don't have to learn too hard of a lesson and lose too many lives. to the people who want to push a political agenda and risk lives. So, yeah, that said, I see Marines of the future pretty much the same as Marines of present year. Because if you kind of go back and you look at Marines from like the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, we're still kind of pretty much the same. And that is that we tend to be rule breakers. We tend to we make do with what little we have. We're not as well funded as all the other branches, and so we've had to learn how to adapt. And because of that, we have to break and bend a lot of rules. We are loud, outspoken individuals who we're going to make our point, and we're going to fuck shit up. When I was in, it was very common to get into fights, or to see people get into fights regarding just disagreements, general disagreements over what's being done or what have you. So here's a story. So there was a sergeant who was a platoon sergeant, okay? And there was a staff sergeant who was the acting gunnery sergeant for the company, okay? And the staff sergeant was not well liked. And so he walked in to tell the sergeant what to do, or he came in with this attitude in front of other Marines, mind you, which you should never, it came in and basically tried to undermine the sergeant's authority in front of his Marines. So the sergeant pulls out a piece of paper and a pencil. He then unbuttons his pants, pulls out his dick, flops his dick on the freaking paper, traces his dick, and then throws it at the staff sergeant and says, "When your dick is bigger than mine, then you could tell me what to do. Until then, get the fuck out of my shop." So that, I think, is a good representation of how Marines are. So even fictional ones, we really put our big thing is mission accomplishment before troop welfare. We will always put the mission first before putting our own welfare, before seeing to our own welfare. So I know the Corps love their traditions, so I don't expect, it won't change for a long, it really won't. Who knows, man? Who knows? I'm sure if the Marines of 1775, were to see us today, who knows what they'll think, hopefully, they say that the Marine Corps, the Marine Corps is a bunch of drunks with a war problem, and so that's really what it is. I talked to my neighbor's son who's a 0311, and the stories he tells me are kind of out of control. Like there's a part of me that's like, where the hell are your NCOs? Like, you guys need to rein in your shit. They're even more out of control. I don't know. But we will still celebrate the Marine Corps birthday. All right. 11. If you got to completely customize your gear down to the paint of your rifle, what would you have preferred to carry into battle instead of what you had at the time? So, we weren't allowed to paint our rifles. It was black on black on black on black is all we were allowed. I definitely would have liked to have painted my rifle just, a sandy color just to blend in with my environment. I remember going and working with 5th Group in Ramadi in 2004, And it was just so cool to see that they had painted rifles. I was like, oh my God, it's all just rattle can stuff. They just, sprayed it on. But man, I was like, oh wow, that was really cool. You guys can have colored, have painted rifles. Ours was just black. And black is a easy thing to stand out, let me tell you, especially in a desert environment. So yeah, I would have liked to do that. I mean, like I said before, as far as what I would like to prefer to carry into battle, yeah, I want a lightweight rifle that can withstand full auto fire while also being able to, put on all the gizmos and gadgets that I need for it to work properly. So, if I had a magical wand, I would have a 1 pound, maybe HK 416 or Sig Spear or something. I don't know. Whatever. Hell, I would have liked just an M4, but I guess I'm just not really that imaginative. Like right now, I have I would like to carry my rifle, the rifle that I have now. I've got a LaRue 11.5 inch LaRue with a Huxworks flow can on it. I've got an EOTech. I need to upgrade my EOTech. I've got the 512. I want to get one of the fancy dancy ones with a magnifier on it and a Surefire light. Give me a PEC, whatever they're up to now. PEC 57. I don't know what the hell they're up to now, but give me some laser and IR laser and flood capabilities on there, and I'd be happy with that. And make it, 5 pounds, So that's what I would like. Because right now it's at 11.5 pounds, and that's it's heavy. It's too heavy to carry into combat. I haven't got a clue. He says, this is him more. And why is that? I haven't got a clue about the thoughts and feelings towards what Marines were issued or not issued. But if you had more freedom with gear choice, what would you have done with it? You're also talking about gear total. Yeah, so when I was in, there wasn't, if you were into gear, okay, if you were really into gear, if you went out and bought your own gear instead of just wearing the gear that you were issued, we called you a gear queer. Okay, it was like a derogatory thing. Like you were looked at like a loser if you were like going out and buying your own gear. You were seen as being like silly. Like why would you go buy gear? Like we have gear issued to us. Like we don't get paid enough to go buy our own gear. Like that was kind of the mentality, and it's true. I think I was making like $800 a month or something like that. It was not a lot back then. I can't remember how much it was. It wasn't a lot. We were making not a lot. Anyways, so the idea was, or maybe it was $800 each. I can't remember. Anyway, wasn't a lot. Go look it up. Go look up the pay scale. But it was kind of, we didn't have, I would say that it wasn't until like the 2010s that the tactical space started seeing like a renaissance of like new gear, that was cool, we started getting like really nice gear. Because back in 2004, the best gear you could get was Blackhawk. And that was like, if you're not familiar with Blackhawk, it's comparable today of like Condor gear, airsoft gear, and so it just wasn't, and there wasn't a whole lot of like thought process behind it all. It was all really just kind of like, there was no modularity, there was no making it your own, there was no customization, so what we had, our interceptor vests, with the Molly on it, was like the new thing. It was the cool thing. Everybody wanted these interceptor vests. We didn't even have plate carriers back then. Plate carriers weren't really a thing. We did have some plate carriers, some Blackhawk plate carriers, but they were really, really rudimentary, especially compared to what we have today. Especially compared to like what the Marines are issued today and what people are issued and what's available on the market. So what we thought about it, we didn't really put a whole lot of thought into what we were issued. It was just like, this is what we had. This is what we were given. We didn't really have gear choices because nobody was really thinking that way. People who were thinking that way, you see a lot of these advancements in gear coming out of SF and the special operations community, because they had the funds to do it. They had, I forget what the term is, but they have a fund that they can go out and buy stuff off the rack, on the private sector. So they were the ones who were trying to innovate and looking at modernizing their gear and staying ahead of the curve. Whereas we're just dumb Marines, man. We were given, here's your gear. Okay, this is our gear. Like, that's it. Like, the customization came down to, I don't want to wear the dick flap. That we had like a little flap on our kit, protect our femoral artery, or we also had like these football shoulders, these shoulder pads that were these big giant shoulder pads. We're like, oh, I don't want to wear that. Okay, so we just didn't put that on. Like that was customization for what we had, So we really didn't have a lot of, like, we didn't think about it. We would do like minor things. I always had, if you see pictures, I'll put up a picture of me. I have a little a big carabiner on my interceptor vest that I would have there, that was easy for me to attach my helmet to, or I could clip in my rifle or something. So that way it didn't come off my vest. Or if I was wearing my backpack, my assault pack, I would clip it in to my vest, so that way it didn't fall off my shoulders or whatever as I was running around. But that was the most customization that you would really do, or that people would do. It was very, very rare to see anybody do anything outside of something like that. It just wasn't. We just never really thought about it. Sorry for a lame answer. Even lame answers are running long. That's fine. But like today I have my kit. I've got a Cry Precision JPC 2.0, and I have all these nice placards. I've got a Haley Strategic placard, to go on, and all this, zip panels and all this kind of cool guy stuff. And yeah, would have loved to have that stuff. But that wasn't really an option, so we didn't really think much about it. All right, 12, almost done. I don't have the pleasure of knowing any Marines or former military. Well, you know me. I will be more than happy to answer any questions. Also, anybody who's making it this far, if you have any questions, put them down in the comments. I have no problem answering questions to the best of my ability, and as thorough as possible. All right, and as cavalier as possible. But if I ever do, what are things I could do to show my respect to them and appreciation? It's as simple as thanking them for the service. Something just as, like, it sounds corny. Maybe it sounds cringe nowadays, as the kids are saying. I don't know, man. So people thank me for my service, and I thank them for their gratitude. That's how I see things. I had somebody the other day post on YouTube. They're like, "Oh, you're a hero," and I'm like, "I'm not a hero." That feels like a little bit too much. The heroes are not. I'm not a hero. I'm a guy who did a job. And I got a career out of it. So. And I became a man, and I became, a person who can actually, protect his family and his friends and blah 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 blah. So I definitely got more out of the Marine Corps than the Marine Corps got out of me. That's for sure. Yeah, just thanking them. If you see them in a bar, hey man, I'll always take a free drink, man. If you want to buy me a drink, awesome, man. Buy me a beer or whatever. That's cool. Just a handshake and thank you for your service. it goes a long way. It really, really does. Same thing. You say, I know that for some maybe former military, they were just doing a job. Yeah, and yeah, man. If that's, like I didn't even read that part. Yeah, it really is kind of that. For me, it's, I understand it, right? I understand why the person, I think it was a woman who called me a hero. Like, I get it. I, I will say thank you. I'm not a hero, but I appreciate the sentiment, It's hard to hear a lot of that stuff and not think of, friends and people that I've known who died. So I have to kind of like swallow my instinct of just rejecting it and just be like, oh, you don't have to thank me, because I also understand that it's not about me. You're not just thanking me, you're thanking everybody that I represent. I don't just represent myself, to you or to the person who's thanking me. I am a living representation of every single person who serves, who has served, or whoever will serve. Whether they lived or they died. I am that living representation for that person. And so for me, I thank them for their gratitude, because I know that it could be very easy. Instead, I also get people who say horrible things to me, that I was in Iraq and I was just raping and killing innocent women and children, or I was just there for the oil that we never got. Or I got one the other day. It was like, how does it feel to know that you went to Iraq, to serve the Israeli military or the Israeli government, or doing what the Jews wanted you to do, or whatever. They were something anti-Semitic or whatever. And it's just like, you're stupid. Like, those people are dumb. So I definitely get, for every one of those, I get 10 or more thank you for your services. So I thank people for their gratitude and understanding. And even if you may not agree with the invasion of Iraq, or you may not agree with the invasion of Afghanistan, or you may not, or you may have this whole spiel about the war industrial complex and Raytheon and this company and that company and Halliburton, blah 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 blah. Like, if you could separate those feelings and then say, thank you for at least serving and serving your country, and you could separate those things, then that takes a big person to, a mature person, and I respect that a lot. So I'm grateful for people who show gratitude to me, and again, I know that's not about me. It's not about me. They don't know anything that I've done. They don't know anything about me. They just know that me and other people have raised our right hand and swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that's what they're thanking. That's, why they thank me. And so conversely, I could tell that you, the person who wrote me these questions, but people who maybe made it this far, an hour and a half into the video, can appreciate, and be, eager. Like, I love seeing the eagerness, the excitement, the willingness and the desire to learn more about the Marine Corps, the military, or whatever, and that's why I try to be an open book about these sort of things, because, those, you inspire me to keep talking and keep going. One last thing, I'll finish this question with this, is just that, I was diagnosed with PTSD back in 2008. This isn't a pity party. I'm just explaining that happened. And one of the things that I learned that helps me is talking about things. So answering any kind of questions, I love it. And being able to talk about things really helps me kind of just organize my thoughts and feelings and all these kind of other things, to just kind of rationalize things, talk about it, and really have a better understanding of my time, my service, and everything that surrounded what I did for my beloved country. So anyways, all right, last but not least. All right, we are at number 13. Do you have any stories of or recall any officers being complete dumbasses or otherwise just being a pain in the ass? What sorts of things did they do, and how did those under their command feel about it? Oh, geez. Okay, so I could speak for another hour plus on this topic. I won't. I will spare you. But, so I will tell you that working as cadre for the Army, there was another civilian instructor. I was a civilian instructor. There was another civilian instructor there who was a reserve or National Guard. I can't recall which. Whatever, they're the same freaking thing. I don't care. Officer. And she, one time, I forget what I said or whatever, but she one time said aloud, she's like, "You don't like officers, do you?" And I guess I have a lot of strong feelings about officers. I guess I never really thought much about it. So here's as quick of a spiel as I can about officers. So I am now in my 40s, and I can now look back on officers differently. Okay? When you are a 19-year-old, 20-year-old Marine, and you have a 22-year-old, 23-year-old officer in charge of you, you're seeing the rank, and so generally speaking, you kind of judge them based off of the rank, and you have to treat them with respect, okay, regardless of what they do. Now, in my 40s, I can look back and realize that an officer, a Marine officer, is a 22, 23-year-old kid who joined the Marine Corps who just happened to go to college first. And during their time in college, who knows what they could have been doing. They could have been frat boys. They could have been, going to toga parties every weekend, getting drunk and getting C's, gets degrees, barely passing their classes, and then join the military. They could have got a degree in underwater basket weaving, feminist hygiene therapy, I don't know, whatever the hell, dance therapy, whatever, right? Like, who knows? You don't know. All you know is that they're an officer. I don't know what you went to school for. I don't know. And it could be relevant. It could be irrelevant to the job that they're doing. Okay. So with that said, I judge officers a little differently now than what I did when I was younger. But I still generally don't care for them generally. That said, I have had amazing officers. I have had, I would argue, the best officers. I've worked with some of the best officers the military has to offer, ever. Like, amazing. I've also had horrible officers that had no place in the military as well. So they come, and the same thing could have been said about enlisted personnel, right? It's just when you're an officer, you're just kind of put in charge, and it's a weird dynamic, right? Because like I said, you could be 23 years old, a second lieutenant or a first lieutenant. You come in, whatever, and now you are in charge of the 26-year-old staff sergeant or gunnery sergeant who has been in the military for 10 years, right? So, and you just show up, and it's your first fucking day, and there's some lieutenants who show up, and they're like, and they get it. They're like, hey, I'm new. I'm gonna just follow along and just follow and learn. But there's others who come in and go, this is how it's gonna be. There's gonna be changes around here. Well, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that, and they think they're gonna reinvent the wheel, and they have, anywhere between 20 some odd guys to Marines to 100 some odd Marines underneath their command. And it's like, yeah, no, dude, we've been doing this for a lot longer than you. You just showed up. You need to sit down and shut up. But that you can't say that because they're officers. All right. Officers, one of the major issues that I have with officers is what I call careerism. Okay. So remember earlier I mentioned that the Marines, we put mission accomplishment before troop welfare. Mission accomplishment before troop welfare. That is what we do. We have a mission. We're going to accomplish that mission before we tend to all of our individual basic needs. Okay. We will go without eating if we're still pursuing that mission. Okay. Or whatever, right? Whatever the case may be. Okay. Officers, they tend, generally speaking, what I've witnessed through my 20 years, generally speaking, officers care more about their careers than anything else. Okay? So they will put their careers first over their troops, over the mission, right? They will generate missions around the idea of their careers. So they will say, we're going to go do this mission, and they will justify the mission, but in the back of their heads, they know that if they get this mission done, that's going to help their career. Okay? And so that's a big issue that I have. That's huge. Like, I hate that. And it happens. And I've seen it happen. I've seen, again, I don't like it when my life and other lives are jeopardized for personal gain or incompetence. Both are horrible. Okay? And I see that happen. Okay? And I've seen it happen. So here's an example. With Small Craft Company, I had one of the best officers in my career right off the gate. And I didn't realize it. I didn't appreciate it. Again, I was a little bitch that was always crying about wanting to go home instead of appreciating where I was and what was going on at the time. Because I was, 19 years old, 20 years old, and I just wanted to get home back to my girlfriend so we can have relations and stuff. But I digress. So I had one of the best officers ever. His name was Paul Stubbs. He was awesome. Okay. He was what we call a Mustang. Mustangs are generally pretty great. Mustang is just a colloquial term that we use to say that he was prior enlisted. He was enlisted in the military first, then he picked up a commission, and then became an officer. Okay, so Captain Stubbs was a ranger, enlisted ranger in the Army, got a commission, and then joined the Marine Corps. Okay. With some other things going on in between, but I won't get into that. Okay, he was great. He was an excellent leader. He taught me a lot about leadership and what it meant to be a good leader. Okay. Conversely, we had a lieutenant come in. Now we deployed as 2 platoons. So a company typically will have 3 or 4 platoons. We had 2 platoons deploy while 2 platoons stayed back in the rear and trained, and then our first 2 platoons then we turned over. We did a RIPTO, a relief in place, turnover of authority, with the other 2 platoons that stayed back in the States. Okay, so the 2 platoons that were coming in to replace us had a lieutenant, and this lieutenant we were out on a patrol up in Haditha, up in a lake, like probably maybe one of the largest, if not one of the largest lakes in Iraq. Okay, the Haditha Lake. Okay, and we're out on a patrol, and this lieutenant has a 249, a SAW squad automatic weapon, in his hands. And we're patrolling, we're on the boat, and we hit a wake, and he drops the 249, because it wasn't strapped around his body, into the water. Okay. There goes a machine gun, right there, in the middle of the lake. So, what happens? Well, now we have to search for the 249. So we spent hours out there combing the lake, trying to find this machine gun that dropped from this lieutenant. Now, I don't know what happened to this lieutenant. If anything, we left. But I'll tell you that if that was a private to drop a 249, he'd be a private for the rest of his career. You know, he'd be in a lot of trouble. Okay. But as a lieutenant, typically officers look out for other officers. And so who knows? Maybe it got swept under the rug. Maybe not. Who knows? I don't know. Okay. But a lot of times officers will hook up other officers, and when officers should be severely punished, they won't be punished like they should. So that's an officer being a complete dumbass. I have a lot of other stories, but generally speaking, the people under the command, the Marines under their commands, or soldiers, because I've seen it in the Army as well, under their command, they know about it. We'll talk about it in hushed terms. You know, we'll yeah, can you believe, you know, maybe we might have like a nickname for them or something like that. But for the most part, you kind of have to just deal with it. You know, you kind of have to just work around the incompetencies of the officer. You know, you sometimes maybe, you know, you look for times when if something is told to you to go do something, you might just, you know, we weren't able to do that, you know, or something. You know, you might find ways to just kind of circumvent their authority. Not trying to like make things bad for him, but just to save you some sanity or whatnot. Sometimes you could do what we call sometimes you can do what we call request masked. So that is where you can go above their command and put in like a formal complaint for that person. We kind of did that in Small Craft Company. We had our CEO was not good. If you've seen Generation Kill and you recall Captain America, the captain who was like shooting the AK and just a complete piece of garbage and getting people potentially killed or really kind of making a mess of everything. We had a CEO that was very similar to that. You know, he was a piece of work. Okay, so I found out just recently that our admin guy, who along with other staff and COs, the rest of the command, unbeknownst to the CO, went behind the CO's back and got him orders to leave and to be removed from the company and have to go, early. You know, I think he was only in theater for like 3 months or something like that out of our 9-month deployment, or 4 months out of our 9-month deployment. And then Captain Stubbs then got promoted. He was a lieutenant. He got promoted to captain and then took over command. So that sort of thing does happen and can happen. So especially if you've got a great admin guy who can find a way to get orders written up. So, but most of the time you have to just kind of grin and bear it and just kind of make do. So anyways, So that is 13 questions, 13 answers. If you have any more, I'll be more than happy to answer them. I hope I've answered them thoroughly. I know we're at an hour and 46 minutes right now, 47 minutes almost. So I'll probably end up chopping this up and cutting it up into 2 parts. I don't know where I'm going to do that, but I will. But hope you like it. If you have any other questions, like I said, put them down in the comments section. Feel free to write them out. Write them out in numerical format, and I'll be more than happy. Maybe I'll do this again and answer more questions. Like I said, my career has spanned most of 20 years, but you know, I was only in the Marine Corps for the first 5, you know, so if it's Marine Corps specific, I am answering questions roughly between 2002 and 2007. And then as a civilian contractor, I did work with Marines in Helmand Province, and then Army Special Forces in Nangarhar and Kunar and stuff. So anyway, so that's where my experience comes from. So any other questions, let me know. And until then, I appreciate you staying until the end. Till next time, cheers.